Morning, morning, morning. Delighted to see you. I've been elevated in this new role that I've assumed, which is to take the opportunity to introduce Vincent Meredith Harris. You heard me make an announcement earlier in my rambling remarks about a brother beloved. It would be Vincent. The script for the entirety of the summit is Vincent's work product. Give him a hand. He served in the cabinet for Governor Gray Davis. He served as chief of staff for the late Congresswoman Juanita Millender McDonald. He served as chief of staff for Supervisor Mark Ridley Thomas. His boss's name is Celeste Rose. You did get that. And he's an extraordinarily gifted person. He has stood with me, by me, through thick and thin. You understand what I'm saying? That's the kind of human being he is. He's a graduate of UCLA and University High School. I'm from Manual, he's from Uni. You do hear me, do you not? I like blues, he likes jazz. But there is no daylight between us, Carlotta, and we are delighted that he's here. He will introduce Dr. Shani Bayard, but to give focus to the work of Project 2025, I give you now Professor Vincent Meredith Harris, who has fretted over this presentation. So you all are in for a treat. Fasten your seatbelts. Get something to drink. Water only, please. Text me if you need me, because it might be around 6 o'clock before you get out of here. Vincent!
Okay, I could have just sat there and engaged in that routine for quite a few more minutes. We do have a person that has definitely inspired and contributed to my own personal growth and development, and that is the founder of the Empowerment Congress, Dr. Mark Ridley Thomas. I want to take this opportunity to welcome everybody to this workshop. This is Project 2025, Threat or Promise. Project 2025, Threat or Promise. And I have been fretting over this for the last several weeks, and particularly in this last week, because how do you deal with the fire siege on the one hand, and on the other hand, the Trump 2.0 second inauguration and the slew of executive orders that we've seen come our way? And the answer is simple. It's consistent with the mission of the Empowerment Congress. We have to educate, engage, and in that context, empower. Educate, engage, and empower. And the practice of civic engagement is informed by the principles of democratic participation, intentional civility, and reciprocal accountability. Those are big, highfalutin words. I'm not going to bother to try to define them now. We try to define it in our practice, but they are listed in the guiding principles of the Empowerment Congress, which is on our website in the About Us tab. But what you can do is go to your program book and look at page number 12. And there are 4 of the bullets at the bottom of page 12 that I'd like to call your attention to. The first is evidence-based inquiry, discussion, and public policy development. The second is respect for diversity and the dignity of all persons. The third is collective advocacy and direct action in the redress of grievances. And the fourth is mass mobilization rooted in the agency of the individual. That's what we're talking about today. Those 4 elements: evidence-based inquiry, fact-based discourse. Nobody's saying you can't have an opinion, but that opinion needs to be informed by information that is factual, because what we are witnessing right now is an assault on truth. An assault on truth. And the only way we can combat that is with facts and the use of our agency as individuals to disseminate them using all of the technology and all of the means that are available to us. We do this as individuals, but it is in our collective action that we are able to become a material force, the ability to change the world, to change things as they are, and have them submit to our will and our preferences. That's what agency means. So with that said, I'd like to encourage you to be part of this civic engagement movement about which we are discussing, and recognize that the power of the elected officials that you saw on the stage, the power that Mark Ridley Thomas had to get $1 billion of public sector investment in this campus to build that hospital, to build that outpatient clinic, to build the public health clinic, to build the recuperative care center, is a function of your advocacy, the demands of his constituents to reopen this campus in the vision that, in the vision of health that we all share. And that vision of health is not the absence of disease, it's well-being. That's what community is about. So I'm going to spend the next 50 minutes or so, hope you can bear with me, going through several different presentations, PowerPoint, a couple of videos, several videos that are short, and to try to provide you with the context and the information that you need to understand Project 2025. That's going to be followed by a more interactive conversation led by my colleague, Dr. Shawnee Byard, who's a member of the Empowerment Congress Leadership Council. And at the conclusion, it is our hope that you will be motivated to join with us on Wednesday, February the 5th, virtually, as part of a newly formed work group entitled the Government Reform and Accountability Work Group of the Empowerment Congress, that will specifically involve you in efforts to combat the most pernicious impacts of Agenda 47 and Project 2025 on the one hand, and to advocate for the things that he said he was committed to, some of which we might be able to get behind, believe it or not. But that's going to be rooted in our evidence. So somebody said earlier, it's not what he says, it's what he does. And it's not what we say, it's what we do. So with that, please, I'm sorry, before we go to the first video, which is the illustrate to educate video, I wanted you to know that we're going to focus on, in some of our slides, on Social Security, Medicare and Medicaid, public health, and education K through 12. And the reason we're doing that is because somebody said if you want to understand policy, follow the money. And the federal government furnishes to residents of South Los Angeles billions of dollars in revenue. Now, to appreciate exactly how much that is, by a show of hands, how many of us in this room are still working on our first $1 million? Now, $1 billion is 1,000 million. $1,000 million. And Musk, after investing $200 million, reportedly saw his wealth increase in the 24 hours after Trump's election, this term, $20 billion. So, perspective, 20,000 million.
Right.
Let me repeat that, 20,000 million. Now again, on a show of hands, who's working on their first billion? Right. How far you got to go? All right. So at this time, I'd like to have you look at the monitors, and we will play the Illustrate to Educate video. While they're doing that, let me just mention a few things. Trump 2.0 constitutes both a threat and a promise to us. He's promised some stuff. He said there shouldn't be any tax on tips. Well, there are a lot of service workers from the 2nd District who could use an extra bump in their paycheck by not being taxed on tips. That's a promise he made. Now, bear in mind that the impact will be a precipitous decrease in the amount of federal revenue that would be available to us in the form of services provided by the federal government. So that's an issue. We need to recognize that if he's saying one thing, it may be meaningful to us, but if he's saying another, it's not necessarily so. I think since we're having a bit of an issue, we'll skip that. Well, actually, I really need that video. All right, so I think they're working on finding it. In the meantime, let me talk a little bit more about the Empowerment Congress. So I was on my way here this morning and I was listening to MSNBC, and Simone Sanders made an interesting observation that I think is appropriate for this occasion. reminded us that Michelle Obama, everybody loves her, said a couple of things. When they go low, we go high, right? When they go low, we go high. Simone said, I think we need to modify that. When they go low, we go toe to toe. When they go low, we go toe to toe. And then I was reminded of this whole idea about merit that Donald Trump is putting out, right? And I was, when I was in college, I was having a conversation with a group of students, black and white. We're talking about this idea of merit and what constitutes merit. And my friend said, Robert, you know him, Dotson Wilson, made this observation. Babe Ruth never hit a home run off of a black pitcher. Babe Ruth never hit a home run off of a black pitcher. And that's factually correct. And you know why? Black folks couldn't participate in the major leagues. So how meritorious is Babe Ruth's record if the black athletes, like Satchel Paige and others, couldn't compete with him? And so I'm reminded that tomorrow, when the 4 NFL teams play for the 2 championships, 3 of the 4 starting quarterbacks will be African American. Somebody needs to say something about merit and remind Donald Trump that this historic first that we will see tomorrow in the NFL isn't because the talent wasn't there. Any followers of football will know there was a J.C. Watt and a Charlie Ward and a Jimmy Jones, USC quarterback in the 60s, who never got a chance to play football in the NFL. And so if you have an opportunity over the weekend and you are Amazon Prime subscribers, you might want to look at the Evolution of the Black Quarterback documentary. It's a 4-part series narrated by Michael Vick that talks about the evolution of black quarterbacks and the obstacles they had to overcome, including one Tony Dungy, who was the coach for the Steelers, who won the Super Bowl, by the way, as a coach. No, Indianapolis Colts, excuse me. Who was a leading quarterback in the NCAA, but when he got to the NFL, they switched his position because black people didn't have the skills. They didn't have the smarts. They had all that athletic ability, but not the academic talent. So they say, to run a football team. Are we queued up yet? Okay, let's go with it.
Have you heard about Project 2025? Hey, it's Dan Zimmerman and welcome back to Illustrate to Educate. In this video, we'll dive into everything you need to know about Project 2025, including 5 criticisms. Remember, if you disagree with Project 2025 or its criticisms, please don't dislike the video, but instead respectfully comment your thoughts below. Project 2025, led by the Heritage Foundation, is a comprehensive initiative designed to prepare for a potential conservative administration starting in January 2025. It is structured around 4 main pillars: policy development, personnel recruitment, training, and strategic planning for the early days of the new administration. Here's a more detailed breakdown of each component. First, let's look at the policy agenda. The Conservative Promise is a detailed policy guide that provides specific recommendations for governing major federal agencies. The guide encompasses conservative solutions to various issues, including economic policies, healthcare, education, and national security. It is intended to serve as a blueprint for the next conservative administration, ensuring that key conservative values and strategies are implemented effectively from the outset. The second pillar is the personnel database. Project 2025 includes a comprehensive personnel database aimed at identifying and vetting potential appointees for various positions within the federal government. This database seeks to ensure that a future conservative administration has a pool of qualified, ideologically aligned individuals ready to fill key roles. The recruitment efforts span across different sectors and backgrounds, targeting experienced professionals who can execute the administration's agenda efficiently. The third part is the training through the Presidential Administration Academy. To prepare the identified personnel for their roles, Project 2025 has established the Presidential Administration Academy. This academy offers a range of training programs including workshops, seminars, online courses, and mentorship from former administration officials. The training is designed to equip future administrators with the necessary skills and knowledge to implement conservative policies effectively. Fourth is the 180-day playbook. The 180-day playbook is a strategic document outlining the immediate actions to be taken by the new administration within the first 180 days. This playbook is crafted to enable swift policy reversals and the implementation of conservative priorities, ensuring a smooth and impactful start. It includes specific actions for various departments and agencies, focusing on undoing the policies of the previous administration and setting the stage for long-term conservative governance. Now let's talk about the coalition and organizational structure. Project 2025 is supported by a coalition of over 100 conservative organizations, including think tanks, advocacy groups, and academic institutions. This broad coalition brings together diverse expertise and resources to support the project's goals. Notable participants include former officials from the Trump administration who contribute their experience and insights to the project. There are specific policy focus areas in Project 2025. Project 2025 proposes significant changes to federal policies on reproductive health. These include removing references to abortion from federal laws and regulations, reversing the approval of abortion pills, and defunding clinics that provide abortion or contraception services. The initiative also aims to reinstate the Comstock Act to ban mail-order abortions and reshape Medicaid to avoid funding reproductive health care services that include abortion. Another focus area is cultural and social issues. The project emphasizes the restoration of traditional family values and religious principles. This includes opposing policies perceived as supporting cultural Marxism and promoting a pro-life agenda. It advocates for policies that support the nuclear family, religious liberty, and traditional gender roles. There's also the leadership of Project 2025, which is directed by Paul Dans, a former chief of staff at the Office of Personnel Management during the Trump administration, with Spencer Sherteen serving as associate director. Both bring extensive experience from their previous roles in government, contributing to the strategic planning and execution of the project. So what are the criticisms of Project 2025? Project 2025 has sparked significant criticism from various sources. Critics argue that the project embodies a comprehensive plan to centralize executive power, erode democratic norms, and enforce a far-right agenda on American governance and society. Let's take a look at 5 specific criticisms in more detail. First is the centralization of executive power. One major criticism is that Project 2025 seeks to expand presidential control over the federal bureaucracy. The plan includes reviving the Schedule F classification, which would allow the president to replace thousands of civil service employees with political appointees loyal to the administration. Critics argue this would undermine the nonpartisan nature of the civil service and politicize federal agencies, making them tools of the executive branch rather than independent entities. Second is the attack on democratic institutions. Critics highlight that Project 2025's blueprint includes proposals to dismantle or weaken key democratic institutions. This includes plans to defund the Department of Justice and dismantle the FBI and other agencies that could act as checks on presidential power. Such moves are seen as efforts to undermine the rule of law and enable the executive branch to operate with little oversight or accountability. Third, the project also faces criticism for its potential use of government power to target political opponents and critics. There are fears that it would enable the executive to pursue legal action against political adversaries and critical media outlets, drawing parallels to authoritarian regimes where dissent is suppressed through state mechanisms. The fourth criticism is the social and cultural agenda. Project 2025's policy agenda includes strong positions on social issues, promoting conservative values that critics argue could roll back rights and protections for various groups. The document outlines plans to restrict LGBTQ+ rights, enforce strict anti-abortion measures, and integrate Christian nationalist principles into government policy. This agenda has raised concerns about the erosion of civil liberties and the imposition of a particular religious and ideological framework on the entire nation. Lastly is the environmental and climate policy rollbacks. The project's stance on environmental regulations is contentious. It proposes significant rollbacks of climate policies, which critics argue would have detrimental effects on efforts to combat climate change and protect the environment. This aspect of the plan is seen as catering to business interests at the expense of long-term ecological sustainability. Did you find this video about Project 2025 to be helpful? Remember not to dislike the video, but rather like the video, comment, and subscribe to support more simple and objective videos on topics that matter. If you liked this video, please check out my other videos.
All right, so that was pretty good, huh? Yeah. So in doing research, I looked at a bunch of videos and I found that to be probably the best short and engaging discussion of Project 2025. But there are literally dozens of similar videos. And so I want to encourage you to use a tool more powerful than a hand grenade, your smartphone. Because with internet access, you can easily and readily obtain a lot of the information that you will be seeing for the remainder of this presentation. So let's start with the demographic profile of Los Angeles County. I don't know if you can see that. The main point of it is that we live in a diverse county, and the critical thing to know between 2010 and 2020's census is that the African American population declined, the Latino and Asian Pacific Islander population increased, and the white population decreased from 26% to 25%. That'll be important for you to see in just a moment. That I don't expect you to look at, but it's the top line of that previous chart shows you what the demographic profile is of Los Angeles by gender, age, and ethnicity. And you'll see that the African American community is at 7.9%. That's a distribution of the population by education, marital status, and linguistic group. And you'll note that 43% speak English only, and 39% speak Spanish. On the education side, you'll note that 20% of Angelenos have bachelor's degrees, 20% have high school or high school graduates or more, and then there's some college and some graduate and professional degree numbers as well as associate degrees. This is an old data slide related to the profile of District 2, and the key point I think there is that it estimated at the time that the population was about 2 million, It's a little less than that right now, and that the median household income is $42,528. That means that half the people earn more than that, half the people earn less than that. This is a table that shares with you how many beneficiaries there are of Social Security in its various categories. So you'll note that there are a total number of 349,163 beneficiaries of Social Security. If you look down there, that second to the last line where it says Los Angeles County. And then if you go up to the top, that's out of a total of 1,114,177 in California as a total. That means that about a third of Social Security beneficiaries in all of the state of California live in Los Angeles County. And the different categories include SSI and the money for the aged, blind, and disabled. And you'll note in monetary values the last two columns. So the monetary value of the SSI recipients, I'm sorry, never mind, forget that. There are 144,916 SSI recipients and 281,000 total recipients.
Project 2025 is an extensive proposal to quickly enact dozens of conservative policy goals in the event Donald Trump wins the presidential election. Many Verify viewers have been asking us about what specifically the project proposes. For example, Diane and Pam both asked us, does Project 2025 propose eliminating Social Security benefits? So let's verify. Our sources are the text of the project, statements made by its authors, and the Heritage Foundation. The basis for Project 2025 is a book called The Mandate for Leadership, recently published by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank. We searched the entire 922-page document, and Social Security is not directly addressed once. So we can verify, no, Project 2025 does not propose eliminating Social Security. It doesn't propose any changes to the program at all. That said, some of the people behind Project 2025 have suggested significant changes to Social Security themselves in the past. The Heritage Foundation published an article only a few weeks ago that advocated raising the retirement age, meaning seniors would have to wait longer to be eligible for benefits. The article was written by a Project 2025 contributor. And another contributor advocated in 2018 for Social Security to be privatized, effectively eliminating government-provided benefits.
That means you could actually take out the money and you have a higher benefit than you would get Social Security.
We have several more stories about what Project 2025 does and doesn't propose at verifythis.com. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
So now we have Medicare enrollment and Medicaid, the federal program that provides significant subsidies to the state to provide health care for low-income people. Medicare is an age-based health care delivery system. I am a recipient of Medicare, even though I don't look like I could be. You'll see that in LA County, there are 1,411,533 Medicare beneficiaries, 14.1% of the population. And then those who are enrolled in Medicare Advantage programs and those that are in the fee-for-service general Medicare program. That becomes important a little later, but I just wanted you to see what that number looks like. This is the distribution of Medicare benefits by ethnicity. You'll note that African Americans track relatively closely to our percentage in the general population, but the white population represents about 50%. Now, this is where analysis comes in. Remember when I said that the white population in Los Angeles County was about 25%? That's saying that 50% of the white population in LA County is Medicare eligible. Yes. Pardon me? Yes. Yeah. There probably are more recent data. But that's, I hope, going to be one of our tasks in the Government Reform and Accountability task. So this is a tease. If I can do this with a smartphone, a laptop, and a desktop, you can too. It's not that difficult. Yes? Where would you find this slide? I think I have a slide that actually has the information on it a little later.
Yeah, you can, Medicare enrollment for LA County will come up, and I don't know if my mic, Brandon, is on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can also you'll find that most of the data around our stats for LA County, our stats for California, are between 2021 and 2022. Generally related to these topics that we're focusing on. Some we're able to get 2023 data, but primarily it kind of hovers around those years.
I tried for purposes of this slide to get the most current data, and this actually may be 2023 data, but I think there's another slide that identifies the source. But this is a relatively hastily put together
So here's 20.
thing. This is the Medi-Cal population. You see that January 2023? And that indicates how many total Medi-Cal eligibles there are in Los Angeles County, okay? 45.7% of those who are receiving health care are Medi-Cal eligible, I think is how to interpret that slide.
Yeah.
Okay? That's Medi-Cal eligibility by race and ethnicity. And again, I want you to do two things. Look at that purple slide, or that purple portion. 12.5% is the white population. 56.6%, I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah.
9, yeah. 56.6% are the Latino population, and the African American population is in the yellow or pale beige, 9.5%. That should tell you what income inequality looks like.
Yeah.
Get what I'm saying? And the importance of federal resources to people of color communities. Because what Ronald Reagan did when he was elected to pursue his agenda was to impose a social austerity program. That is, he defunded federal programs in a highly racialized manner that targeted deliberately people of color communities, which served as a cushion for the more affluent white community, which is a contributing factor to income inequality, which began to take off during the Reagan administration. This slide shows county enrollment in covered California, or California's version of the Affordable Care Act. So again, you see the impact of the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, on communities. And then lastly, with all of those resources being used, This slide demonstrates that there is still a significant population that is under or uninsured. And if you look at that little percentage of African Americans, which I think is 4.8%, remember that's 4.8% of 748,000. Remember that hand grenade I showed you? It has a calculator on it. You can do the math. If it says 748,000, you multiply that times 0.048, that's 4.8%, and that will give you the number of black people who are uninsured. I did that earlier, and I think it's about 56,000. Okay? So this information is available, and we can use our capacity, our agency, our educational skills and training to extrapolate and derive information that may not be readily apparent to us because we didn't find the right graph. So this is the enrollment in covered California. Oh, I went backwards.
Went back, yeah.
And I think
Our Verify team is working to address your questions about the conservative agenda known as Project 2025. It's a plan to transform the government in favor of party policies and ideas. Our national reporter, Casey Decker, explains what the proposal says about Medicare and Medicaid.
Questions are still pouring in about Project 2025, an extensive proposal to enact conservative policies. We got numerous texts and emails asking, does Project 2025 propose cuts to Medicare or Medicaid? So let's verify. Our sources, the text of the project, KFF, the Center for Economic and Policy Research, and the Center for American Progress. First, Medicare, the federal program that provides seniors with health insurance. The answer here is no. Project 2025 does not propose cuts to Medicare. The basis for the project is a 900-page document compiled by a think tank called the Heritage Foundation. And nowhere in the document do the authors suggest reducing Medicare funding or changing eligibility requirements. But there are some proposals that could affect seniors' care and costs. The project says Congress should repeal provisions it recently passed that give the government more power when negotiating drug prices. The authors argue those provisions have created harmful price controls, but other analyses estimate they save seniors hundreds of dollars each year in drug costs. Project 2025 also proposes making Medicare Advantage plans the default rather than traditional Medicare. That means the government would pay for seniors to get private health insurance instead of directly paying their medical costs. Next, Medicaid, a program where federal and state governments help people with limited resources get health care. We can verify, yes, Project 2025 does propose cuts to Medicaid. The authors want to cut costs by reducing eligibility. Specifically, they want to install a lifetime cap on how much time people can spend on Medicaid. And they want to add work requirements for certain people receiving benefits. With your Verify, I'm Casey Decker.
Can somebody tell me, if you have a chronic disease, does the chronic disease impose a time limit on your well-being? Does it say, unless perhaps you are a cancer patient and in remission, does it go away? Exactly. So then we get to a third category of healthcare funding, which is the Prevention and Public Health Fund. These are federal dollars that are used to deal with the prevention of infectious diseases. And you'll note that in 2023, LA County received $21,767,817. And that it's the source of funding for local public health services dealing with immunizations. Now, Trump disavowed Project 2025 as something that he was going to do. I don't know anything about it. Okay? But who is his proposed nominee for the Secretary for Health and Human Services, under which the Centers for Disease Control and the National Institutes for Health fall? Okay? Note that it was a permanent source of funding, meaning that it was an ongoing appropriation of money from the federal government. But in recent years, i.e. under Republican control of Congress, amendments have been made to reduce those funds. Now, with regard to Los Angeles County and education, did anybody know that there were 80 different school districts in Los Angeles County?
We have a quick question over there.
Oh, yes.
General question. Federal dollars come from internal revenue sources?
Pardon me?
Federal dollars primarily come from internal revenue sources. If the president proposes...
Yeah, there are different streams of revenue that flow from the federal government. This is all of the money that comes from those different streams.
Is eliminated by
The Internal Revenue Service collects the revenue that the government uses to pay for the services.
So if
and if you cut the people who collect the money, less money is going to be collected.
Okay.
Right? So, thank you. Now, I looked for information related to the total Title I funding that comes to education in Los Angeles and couldn't find any graphs like the ones I showed previously. So I just did a Google search, and Google's artificial intelligence gave me that answer. And that's fine because it also links to its source documents. So even if you don't trust AI, you can go to the source of the information that it presents and validate it yourselves. Okay? But that's how easy it is to access information that we need to know what's going on. It's a Google search. Those are the districts.
Project 2025 seeks to dismantle the Department of Education and have the Department of Justice enforce laws related to students with disabilities as well as civil rights protections. It would eliminate protections for LGBTQ students, and it would get rid of Head Start, a program that offers health services and helps feed young children living in poverty. San Diego Unified School District Board Vice President Cody Peterson says there is a racial element to Project 2025's proposals.
If you see who's victimized by these efforts, they're predominantly, or at least disproportionately, students of color, families of color, because we can see the correlations between poverty and disadvantage and race and ethnicity in America.
The plan also advocates for universal private school choice, which Peterson says has been a long-standing goal of the conservative movement, with one aim.
Moving $60 billion at the federal level is not how you destroy public education. You destroy it by essentially universalizing vouchers.
Former President Donald Trump has renounced Project 2025, but he has also praised the Heritage Foundation, which wrote it, and said in 2022 it is laying the foundation for what his movement will do. The organization declined an interview. Amita Sharma, KPBS News.
I was asking a question on the school. So I watched the video this morning about the Department of Education and Trump closing down and putting everything back on the states, right? So in Kentucky, their whole entire school system is funded by the federal government. And so, of course, they realize what happened if it's going to be put back on the state. Kentucky cannot afford, there will be no schools, right? But however, California or Los Angeles, I mean, we got the largest GDP, Are funds going to support their schooling and?
No, I think in the data that I did get a chance to review from the California Department of Education, a significant amount of money comes from the federal government for Title I low-income schools. I think in Los Angeles Unified, I think it receives about $340 million in Title I funding. The Compton or Inglewood Unified School District, the Compton Unified, Linwood also receive resources from the federal government, but nowhere near a whole amount. I think I recall maybe 15%, 15%. But education can never receive enough funding, particularly when you measure it against the money that we spend elsewhere. Now, like the military. I want to conclude this round relatively quickly with these slides pertaining to immigrants, because while this doesn't focus on the areas that I talked about earlier, there's some really startling data that I think this group would be interested in. The first is that 1 in 3 Angelenos are immigrants. The second is 20% of Black residents are part of the immigrant community in Los Angeles. 20%. And that many of them, us, come from Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Jamaica, the top 3 countries that send immigrants here to LA. But you see that there are others from South American countries and from other parts of the Caribbean. The other thing that's fascinating for those of us who are interested in indigenous rights, many of the Mexican migrants are themselves from indigenous communities. And I'm reminded of Nuri Martinez when she was doing her thing about Black folks, that she also excoriated the indigenous immigrants who were coming from Mexico. I think she called them little monkeys. Okay? So that says to me, like the other slide about Black folks, the Black community, we are not monolithic. The Latino community is not monolithic. And so we need to understand that, and as we extend the hand of solidarity to them, understand that their liberation is bound up with ours. And that you might look like a Jamaican when ICE comes and knocks on your door, or a Nigerian. So don't think that because you speak English and have been here since 1619 or before, that you can't be a target, because you can. And what were they saying earlier? If they come in the morning, they come in for you at night. So this talks about the different shares of undocumented from various Central American countries. And it breaks down, again, the number of migrants from Asian Pacific Islander countries, 2 and 3, and then 2 and 5 in the Latino community. And they're defining migrants or immigrants as either folks who just got here or who are first generation. Yes.
Hold for the mic. So we know Trump is targeting Black and brown people. Where is the slide regarding European immigrants? There is a sizable portion of Ukrainians, Russians,
Thank you.
Irish.
Thank you. Go to your tool and look it up. But this is what I would say, because it did occur to me. I'm not going to put that slide. Hopefully somebody's going to ask that question. You did. And since you did, I want to remind everybody, remember Speaker Nancy Pelosi's husband when he was attacked by a guy with a hammer? He was illegal. He overstayed his visa. He was from Canada. Look it up. Why do I mention it? Because our attitudes wind up being shaped by the information that we are being purveyed by people who don't have an interest in sharing with us the information that might be counter to their narrative. Nancy Pelosi's husband suffered a skull fracture in his 80s from an illegal in their words, immigrant. Didn't see Trump post anything on Truth Social. No, what he did was make fun and ridiculed her and her husband. I'm going to have to conclude these PowerPoint slides, but before I do so, I'm going to remind you that we would like to do a follow-up presentation virtually when some of you show up at our Government Reform and Accountability workshop or organizing meeting on February the 5th at, I think it's 6 o'clock, and we'll be sending information out to the registrants for this workshop. But before I go there, let me remind people that Trumpism is Reaganism on steroids. And that it was Ronald Reagan who said, the 9 most terrifying words in the English language are, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. That is what continued, it didn't start, it continued the efforts on the part of Republicans to undermine governmental services. Hold on just a second.
Yes, it created opportunity for those who had before been economically disenfranchised, the poor and the minorities.
This couldn't be further from the truth. Since the start of Reagan's presidency, the wealth gap between the rich and poor began to widen exponentially, and it has hit racial minorities the hardest. From 1978 to 2021, CEO pay rose by nearly 1,500%, while employee pay rose just 18%. From 1980 to 2016, overall income inequality in the U.S. increased by roughly 20%, leaving the U.S. with the highest wealth gap of any country. The wealth of black households and white households also began to diverge in the early 80s. That gap has never closed. Ultimately, the idea that money from corporations and wealthy people would make it to the hands of lower income individuals through tax cuts and market deregulation was proven false, but people on the right still push those ideas.
So you've been distributed this Project 25 select reference and resource materials. This is just a sampling of the stuff that I found while I was conducting research. So you can look up these sources yourselves or find your own and use them accordingly. Now I'm going to really fast skip through some of the slides you are missing without necessarily offering comment. Just hold on a second, okay? There's a comparison between Agenda 47 and Project 2025. Trump's 20 core promises to make America great again. The ones I've highlighted in red are those that I thought had particular resonance in LA County. Rebuild our cities, fight and protect Social Security and Medicare with no cuts. That's a promise. Including no changes in the retirement age. That's a promise. And we could advocate for that because he's not going to do it. And when he doesn't do it, the disappointment that we feel is the same sort of disappointment that some of us feel toward Democrats when they don't do what we want them to do. Does that make sense? Core promises related to federal funding for school pushing critical race theory, that's DEI, deport pro-Hamas radicals and make our college campuses safe and patriotic again. Look at how he uses the word our, and understand when he's talking about our, that doesn't include us. Secure our elections, but provide proof of citizenship. So now you gotta find that dusty, some might call it crusty birth certificate, to the polling place with your driver's license, if you have one, or your California ID, in order to cast a ballot. Those are those promises, again, relevant to LA. This is how he intends to implement. This is what Project 2025 actually entails. This is from the website itself, and I believe I've added the Project 2025 website to this reference list so you can see for yourselves the 4 pillars, which were already discussed, and then the historical context for what Project 2025 is all about is very important, particularly since he's aiming to dismantle the reforms that go back to the New Deal Franklin Delano Roosevelt administration of the 1930s. Because what Roosevelt did was place a premium on social equity through universal programs such as unemployment insurance, Social Security, and health care. With that, I'm going to conclude and turn the mic over to my colleague, Dr. Shawnee Bayard, and again invite all of you to participate with us as we organize ourselves to take on this fight for the long haul, for the duration of the next 4 years.
Okay, so can you guys hear me okay? One of the things that we wanted to make sure to do is to give you an opportunity, as Vincent mentioned, to at least experience what it is like to be a part of a working group. We build consensus, we offer education. We did a deep dive in education here on just laying the groundwork of what Project 2025 is, what it's about. And that's not even everything. We can't cover everything in here, but at least to give you a sense and some resources to look to further educate yourself, right? And then we have Engage and Empower, which if you look on page 8 and 9 of your program books, you'll see how we engage and empower through our working groups, right? We have the homelessness working group, and we also have the civic engagement working group. And then Vincent mentioned a newly formed, because we're folding one old one into a new one, to invite you all to participate in this government reform and accountability work group, right? And so one of the things that's really important for us to do is, as I mentioned, build consensus, get your voices. Your voice informs the policies that we as Empowerment Congress then hold our LA County leaders accountable for, to give response back to share concerns with them. And as you saw the panel this morning, we have some awesome leaders that are ready to fight. And so we want to understand and be able to track their progress. We want them to know that our voice matters. And we've identified some priorities that we want them to focus on as they engage and develop their plans for pushing back against the Trump administration. So I want to get a sense from you all. And this is going to involve your smartphone. My friends from Girls Club of Los Angeles is familiar with this activity. I'm going to open it up and let you guys, do we have our folks in the back? Did they leave? Oh, I see you, Brandon. Okay. All right, so what we want to do, what do I want to start with? Let me see. I want to start with this one. So some of this includes some of the things that we covered, that Vincent covered today, and some other aspects of Project 2025 that, you know, Trump prior to, as Vincent mentioned, you know, as we all knew, he denied exists. Some of us were even told that by people who we respect. It's debunked. Don't pay attention to Project 2025. But these are some significant categories that will help inform the work group. Now, one of the things I'm going to ask you is if you'd like to join, right? And I want you to submit your information so we can make sure that you're involved in the February 5th meeting that we have, right? To continue the work. So yeah, what you do is you scan the QR code, or if you prefer on your smartphone, you can just go to where it says join, go to slido.com and punch in the number and vote that way. We wanted you to only choose, we only want you to choose 3 top priorities that as a working group, we should consider holding our county leadership accountable for, that we should be discussing and organizing around. I'm sorry? Oh. Shoot, okay. All right, it'll probably take me too long to adjust that, I'm sorry. Oh. So just choose one. What's your top? Okay, sorry about that. So we're just doing one, ignore the text, I'm sorry. Just choose one, your top priority. I see some other votes. Okay, so you can, it looks like you can still vote on what matters, but it's going to highlight one. So that's important for us to see. And we're at 29 votes, and there's a lot more than 29 people in here, so we'll give it a little bit more time. Okay, we're at 38 people. This is our community, and so of course education is number one for us, right? We got to take care of our babies, right? That's so important. 42. All right, see some folks still voting. Make sure you push that submit button. Okay, it's still showing us our top 3 too, so that's okay. All right. So we're at about 52. We have a good sense of priorities. We want public education to be a priority. We want public health to be a priority. Can you all hear me okay? Because I feel like I'm yelling. And Social Security preservation. Very good. Okay, I want you to put your smartphones down. And we're going to move to a different poll. And I want you to think about this because I provided a little bit more education in this one because these are executive orders that we are experiencing on a daily basis right now for the last week or so. Every time we look up, we get a ding on our phone, we wake up in the morning, there's more stuff, right? More executive orders. So I tried to capture a few related to our presentation today. One is medication. He's rescinding Biden's executive order to lower the cost of essential medications for those on Medicare and Medi-Cal, which is Medicaid for us. Inclusion, banning DE&I programs at the federal level, eliminating thousands of jobs and targets, thousands of subcontractors. This also folds into, this is both DE&I under inclusion, declaring there's only two genders, male and female, which allows for targeted attacks on the rights and protections for LGBTQIA+ communities, students, etc. There's also impacting our schools and Title I funding. His executive order is proposing that there are conditions on Title I funding for the schools to not have their funding unless they acknowledge that there's only two genders, male and female. Two sexes, that is, that's not gender. Okay, male or female. So that's getting folded into education. All of this is racism, but I'm calling out racism on the pardons of the 1,500 white supremacist insurrectionists who attacked the U.S. Capitol, violently committed murder, and the anti-immigrant initiatives, orders, enforcements, which includes closing the southern border, ends the catch and release, support for asylum seekers awaiting court hearings. There's an app that people had access to if they were seeking asylum and they had court dates, and that app no longer exists. Ending birthright citizenship, which Vincent mentioned, around those communities, including ours that are, all of us that are impacted, and enacting mass deportation raids, which indirectly endanger legal, immigrants as well. And then residents, depending on how you look or are perceived, right? So these are the ones that we want to understand, choosing one that currently harms you or your family the most today. Okay. I must have messed up in terms of setting them up. So we want to get a sense. It looks like you can choose more than one. So that's fine too, but we want to get a sense of the priorities that we're taking on into the work of our working groups as Empowerment Congress. What do you care about so far? Or what's more of a priority right now? And we're at 40 people. I think I stopped at 50 something last time, so I'll let you keep going. I see some phones still up. 53, thank you. Okay, we're at 41. Any other votes? Time to get that in. Looks like D&I is a priority. Medication, impacting Medicare, Medi-Cal. To me, that's only an entryway. We need to be cautious of that right now, right? If he's starting with that, who knows what that will lead to. And then releasing the white supremacists, insurrectionists, back out into the community. Rightfully so. That is a huge concern. They're all concerning, but it's good to get a sense of how you all are feeling at this particular time. Okay. So this is an active poll. You can continue to vote. But I wanted to invite you all to stand for a moment because we are digesting a lot of heavy stuff. And I want to close us out with some visioning. Earlier today, Tavis Smiley kept asking, how do you keep your hope going, right? MRT said, I refuse, right? I see, I'm aware, and I'm continuing to keep my eyes on the prize, right? I got really hyped. You know, my partner will tell you on the first day the first day of January, on 2020, we were focused on celebrating MLK, and I watched Dr. Bernice King's video of her speech. Well, it was the whole ceremony. I watched the whole ceremony, but her speech is, to me, the closest thing you're gonna get to MLK's words today. And so I really, use our, what do you call it, grenade or something?
Our tool.
Our tool. To search up, you can find me on LinkedIn too. I have it posted right there and it says woke, so I'm sure I'm scaring LinkedIn people. Because that was her message, to stay woke. And don't even think about how they're misinterpreting and reframing all of our words, right? Stay woke and stay on mission, right? So we as a community have to practice what centers us, right? We have to practice and remember and draw on not only each other, but do what's right for us to keep us healthy in here, and in here, right? So I want you to just kind of take a deep breath, inhale. I want you to close your eyes. You're in a safe space. And we're gonna take a deep breath. Inhale on 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna hold. 2, 3, 4, and then we're exhale. 2, 3, 4. And let's do that one more time. Inhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. And exhale. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? My company is called Legacy Refresh. And it builds on pausing and recentering, getting to what's real in here, and then upskilling and learning and figuring out how to move forward, right? So I want you to close your eyes one more time, and I want you to envision your hero, the person you look up to. Many mentioned MRT today, who you feel is a mentor. They could be living or they could be an ancestor, right? I think of Harriet Tubman and Nelson Mandela, and how these leaders, right, drew on humanity and love and fight and grit. I want you to envision who that person is for you in your mind, and breathe in their strength, breathe in their skill, breathe in their voice, right? Their resilience. Breathe all of that in, right? Hold that safe in your heart. And remember, as we're moving forward, to call and reconnect to that. And we're going to exhale. I want to let the siren go by. And we're going to exhale all fear, all doubt, all worry, right? We're going to breathe in that courage, that skill, that vision, that clear vision and mission, and stay on. We're going to hold that in and soak that in. And we're going to exhale the self-doubt talk, the self-talk. We're going to exhale that spiral that our thoughts will take us in. We're going to release all of that, right? We're going to release that fear and stay focused. We're going to open our eyes. We're going to see each other. We're all here together doing this work. So the last thing that I just want you to do, and this is not going to go on the screen, well, the prompt, the barcode is, but the information will not. This is the barcode to scan if you would like to join us in our working group. And we're working out the kinks. This is a new proposed piece, but this is just like the homelessness working group, just like civic engagement and empowerment Congress, just like our 33 years of work. We will gather, we will continue this work and be in lockstep and partner with county leadership to move our agenda, right, forward.
Right. I think we're at the point now where we want to conclude the workshop. Before I do so, I'm mindful of a couple of things I heard today. Educate, engage, empower. When they go low, we go toe-to-toe. When they go low, we go toe-to-toe. And then finally, an adage from last year, and I added something. I'm ripe to move. Ripe to move. R, resist. I, insist. P, persist. E, enlist. To M, mobilize. O, organize. V, volunteer. To E, empower. Ripe to move. Ripe to move. Resist, insist, persist, enlist, mobilize, organize, volunteer, empower. Got it? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.